What is up, everyone? I still don't do intros, but whatever the case, welcome to this video. And you know, we do a lot of memeing on this channel. It's fair to say that. And we have a lot of fun doing that as well. And we're going to try to keep doing that, even though my schedule kind of sucks. But today, I thought I would take things in a little bit more of a serious direction. I thought I would dip my toes into the waters of philosophy. And I thought I would take a look at some theories of what happens when you die. And I thought this would be a perfect candidate for a tier list video, because the world could use another one. And you know, all joking aside, I feel like this is less of a tier list video and more of a attempt at some investigation or debate or metaphysical anguish about the philosophy of death. The bottom line is that I'm making a tier list video about the theories of what happens when you die. The death theories, if you will. And today we are going to be talking about these theories. These were all the ones that I could find or even come up with. There's probably more. If you can think of one that I didn't talk about, put it in the comments and I'll let you know what I think of it. But we're going to take these and we're going to rank them on plausibility alone. So just because something's fun or based or something, that's not going to affect the rating. I'm rating these theories on the tier list according purely to how plausible I think they are. And of course, asterisk, 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 this is going to be heavily biased according to my worldview and how my brain works. So don't think this is me like trying to push ideologies down your throat. We're just shooting the shit and we're just thinking about what happens when you kick the bucket, okay? So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay, first off, we have the classic heaven and hell. You know what I'm talking about. The one from the movies. Heaven if you're good, hell if you're bad. Guys, I'm going to cut straight to the chase on this one. This is dog shit. There's no way this is the case as far as I'm concerned. Yes, that means I'm self-reporting as an atheist, but I mean, that hasn't been like an issue for people since like what, 1940 or something. I can be an atheist, get over it. So why do I think this is such a terrible death theory? Why do I think this has no plausibility? Well, there's a few reasons. First of all, as always, there's no evidence that either of these places exist, let alone that God exists, and that's a whole fucking thing that we're just gonna not fucking talk about. By the way, I'm looking at notes I've written down. This is serious business. Next, humans just happen to be some chosen species after, you know, billions of years of evolution. Like, we're the only ones with souls? Like, what about microbes or like dogs or cats or dinosaurs? Do they have souls? Do they go to heaven? Look, the reason I don't find this theory all that convincing is that it's very human-centric, and life could exist anywhere in the universe, in a whole lot of places. So to think that there's like some specific afterlife for like one species is kind of nearsighted. I'm just saying that this is too human-centric. I really don't like when a death theory is too specific for humanity, because that kind of limits the scope of its applicability over an infinite time span, because humans will go extinct. And there was a time before we were here, like many billions of years. So when you're talking about something as universal as death and what happens when you die, I don't think something should be limited to humans. And heaven and hell is, if you're a human and you're good, you go to heaven. If you're a human and you're bad, you go to hell. But like every other animal is like, I don't know. Maybe they don't go to heaven. Maybe they don't go to hell. Maybe they just fucking rot in the ground. I don't know. And so I'm gonna cut it there. That's my reason why heaven and hell is an F tier. Next, this is gonna ruffle some feathers in terms of why I'm grouping everything together, because, dude, I did not want to make a 5-hour video, okay? I'm grouping all of like the old mythological shit, like Zeus, the Egyptians, whatever fucking Norse people believed about their gods. Any of that mythological shit from the past is, I mean, by the transitive property. By the transitive property, any sort of like old religion, oh, if you die, you get eaten by alligators, which is what I think the Egyptians believed. Or for Greeks, like you go to the underworld or something. Look, again, very human-centric. And honestly, it's like the same reasons as heaven and hell. The only reason it's different is because nobody's practicing these religions anymore, really. And so that even further invalidates them. There's no being coming down from the sky. There's no messages given to people. Hey, you guys stop worshiping Zeus. If you guys don't change that, you're all gonna like be eternally damned. Like, that hasn't happened. So for basically the same reason as heaven and hell, I mean, this is unequivocally F tier. I don't think any of these things are going to happen. Any of these like weird mythological stories of the afterlife, I don't think any of them are going to happen when you die. I mean, at the end of the day, these were just like stories to get people to act good. Anyway, moving on. Now we're going to get to our first actually kind of decent theory, and that's human-only reincarnation. Again, this is a very human-centric thing, so this one's going to be D tier for me. Reincarnation is somewhat of a good kind of stab at what might happen in a vague way, but for like all eternity, I'm not sure I'm sold on only coming back as a human. Because if you're able to die and then come back as a human, I feel like you should be able to come back as anything else. And if you're limited to a human body, then it's like, well, when does it stop? Eventually humans will evolve and become something different. So like, when does your reincarnation stop? Human only reincarnation, just because it's human only, I'm putting this one in D tier. This is kind of along the lines of when you hear those stories on, you know, the History Channel on 2 a.m. Like, this lady, in a past life, she was Hitler or something. You know, maybe in some of those stories, there's some validity. Maybe whatever soul you're in, when it comes back, is more gravitated to humans right now, as opposed to like, oh, I've lived as a human. You know, it would be really cool now is to like go back as an ant. Maybe there's some stuff there, but purely limited human reincarnation, I don't like. I'm starting to wonder why I even put it on here, because the more I talk about it, it just seems like a flame form of reincarnation that I just made with extra rules. Anyway, it's D tier. We'll get to like some better ones right now. Next up is the scariest one, I'm sure we all know, you rot in the ground, aka eternal nothingness. This one is one I think a lot of people subscribe to, especially atheists or agnostics. And me personally, as you can tell by my biases, I do kind of see the appeal, because at the end of the day, this is the Occam's razor solution to everything. It's like, hey, you're alive and you die. Simple as that, right? And for like that simplicity alone, I do have to rate it very highly, although I personally wouldn't give it S tier. This is not some hipster thing, because I do believe this is very plausible, right? But to me, it's not like an S tier, wow, that when you really, really think about it makes sense. Because personally, when I really, really think about this, some things don't add up for me. So at the end of the day, this theory basically assumes that the consciousness you are currently experiencing is the only one you'll ever experience. For that reason, you have a bunch of questions about like what makes you you. You run into this problem of what creates your soul. Because if you look at it just scientifically, biologically, it's like, okay, well, your DNA makes stuff. Whatever shit comes together in the right way, like that makes you. And it's like, okay, cool. But what were the odds of those nucleotides and all that shit coming together? It's like cosmically, astronomically low. When you think about what your parents had to do to meet each other, to court each other, you know, fall in love, to have sex. And one of those times when they had sex, the perfect combination of egg cell and sperm cell, your sperm cell beat out millions of others or whatever, some huge number, that comes together and makes you. Those odds are fucked. And those are the odds assuming that your parents already exist. Do the same thing for them and for their parents and for their parents and for their parents, all the way back to like a fucking microbe in, you know, Pangea or something. You have to reconcile that whole fucking chain of cosmic events to happen for your specific soul to be created by like the biological material. Oh, and guess what? This theory also assumes that even if you had a 100% chance of living, of coming into consciousness, what are the odds that you're currently experiencing this lifetime right now in an infinite time span? Well, to me, I do a little simple math and I take a finite value, let's say 75 years or 100 years, let's be generous now, and put that over infinity. Well, what's 100 over infinity in terms of years? 0. Any finite value over infinity is 0. So to me, and this might sound ridiculous after I'm done editing it, but for all those reasons, I cannot, in good faith, put eternal nothingness rot in the ground into S tier. It is still A tier. It is still very plausible because at the end of the day, I must stress, this is the Occam's razor solution. This is the simplest explanation, and for that alone, it gets A tier ranking. It's just some of the odds don't add up, but maybe I'm just an optimist. Okay, moving on. Next one, we have probably my favorite, and that's going to be total reincarnation. You can reincarnate as anything. I think this is pretty solid in terms of a death theory. This doesn't fall into the pitfalls of eternal nothingness. This is totally plausible on an infinite time scale. You can reconcile being conscious right now and being conscious as like an eternal being, in this case, whatever your soul is, because in this theory, you would just keep coming back. It's like a different living being thing. Who knows? You could even come back as like a rock or something. I don't fucking know. But the point is, like, you die and your consciousness takes over something else, like the Avatar in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Just plain and simple, what I like about this is that you can extrapolate this and apply it to an infinite time scale. It's still going to work all the time. It could handle eternity, and it doesn't discriminate against any life form. Although I don't know how your soul would like travel to different planets to take over the bodies of different physical things. I don't know, there's a lot of unanswered questions there, but like, that's the fucking universe for you, baby. So for all those reasons, it's like one of my favorites. Definitely an S tier. I think it's totally plausible. You guys thought this was gonna be a fucking joke video, didn't you? This is the shit I think about when I'm trying to sleep at night, and probably you too. You probably think about this shit. We're talking about it in the open, for real. This is not a joke. I'm treating everything very seriously, just like my last tier list video when we seriously ranked every bar of Doing Your Mom. All right, next we got Become Ghost. Look, I mean, do I need to say anything? This sucks. I mean, it's fun, it's funny, but remember, none of that comes into account here. We're talking plausibility. With the ghost, I wonder how it can reconcile with any of these other theories. Like, maybe it's possible that you go to heaven, right? Or you go to hell, and it's like, you know what? God or Satan, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go like spook somebody in the physical world. Maybe you can do that. But to me, it's just, you know, every single ghost sighting can be attributed to physical phenomena, camera malfunctions, you name it. And this is another one that kind of dives into the very human-centric stuff. And especially, it's like, why do ghosts always have to be Victorian era people? It's so dumb. Like, why can't I see a ghost of a caveman? It's just dumb. I mean, need I say any more? Like, look at Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters International, Ghost Files. Ghosts are a scam, and I will not be fooled. Okay, that kind of wasn't even about death anymore, but you get it. Moving on. Okay, another kind of like reincarnation-esque death theory. This is like a one that I've thought about by myself, but apparently I saw like basically the same idea proposed in one of the articles I was reading in preparation for this, that said this was something called Friedrich Nietzsche's eternal return. I call it the universal heartbeat. And basically this theory states that you live the same life over and over again. You could think of it kind of like the universe expands, then it goes back down and it expands. And it's like just doing this over and over again. But, you know, there's some laws of physics, I'm sure, that are violated in that scenario. And, you know, it's kind of, you just run into questions sort of similar to like either rotting in the ground or heaven and hell. It's like, how does your soul get chosen? Because for some people, this would be awful. Like people who get born and then they die at like 1 year old in a gruesome way, like that's awful. You're gonna be living that shit over and over again. I feel like that would have to be some sort of punishment for some higher level existence stuff. The only good thing about this is that it kind of works on like an infinite time scale, which I know is the buzz phrase here. It could work for like different animals too. I'm gonna put it in D tier along with human only reincarnation. It's like aight, but it's kind of bad. It's not great. I don't really buy it, but I mean, it's not an F tier. I think it's more plausible than heaven and hell. Next, we have The Egg, which is a short story that I read, and apparently a lot of other people have read this short story too. You could look it up. If you look up The Egg Reincarnation story, you're gonna find the story you're looking for. It's a fun little read, but The Egg is kind of a weird one because at first it seems kind of cool, kind of based, and almost like it makes sense because it's one of those ones where like you would live past lives. But the kicker here is that you're living every human life ever. And you live every human life. You get wiser as you go, as you live more and more lives. And at the end, there's some race of gods that's like, you finally learned your lesson. So, you know, as I'm talking about it, it sounds kind of ridiculous. And it is kind of ridiculous in totality. But I think there's some elements of it that are kind of maybe worth considering, like living every human life. Although that would be miserable. Think of how many times you'd have to die in a plane crash. Think of how many times you'd have to die on the battlefield. Think about how many times you'd have to be tortured. Think about how many times you'd have to starve to death, to die of AIDS, to die of yada, yada, yada. This would be awful, and I would not want this to happen. If I died and found out this is what was going on, my like God being soul would have a fucking panic attack. Yeah, I don't really like it. I mean, this just purely on plausibility, I don't like it because it is rather human-centric. Where do you draw the line at human life? Like if you go back a million years, do you live as like some sort of ape? Like there's some harsh cutoff, and that's when human lives start. It doesn't really make sense, but you know, it's a fun story, fun read. I'd encourage you to read it, to think about what happens when you die, you know, gets those juices flowing. But yeah, D tier. Okay, next. This is not really the best drawing because this makes it seem like it's a dream thing, but I call this theory advanced race, eternal life coping mechanism. So just imagine you're some sort of super race in the future of whatever creature, like it doesn't have to be humans, could be whatever. And this civilization has figured out eternal life. And they find out that eternal life actually kind of fucking sucks and is terrifying. So to kind of cope with it, it's like, you know, it'd be really good if we just lived a bunch of finite lives over and over again and we didn't know the wiser. You kind of get something similar to human only reincarnation or The Egg or Universal Heartbeat, Eternal Return. But every time you die, you just wake up and it's like, oh shit, I remember I'm an eternal living race. I remember now I live forever and this is terrifying. Please put me back to sleep. So it's kind of spooky. I dig the theories that kind of gel with eternity, but the sneaky thing about this one is that it doesn't really do that, because at the end of the day, sure, that explains whatever lives you're currently living, but at the top of the stack, if you will, you're one dream deep, right? This existence of living an eternal life. What happens in that universe when you die? You just go up the stack and then you have to make the whole debate over again. So for that reason alone, I think this is another D tier. And just to be nice, I'm moving this one up to C tier. I think it makes more sense than these three. So I'm just gonna officially change my rank of living the same life over and over again. I'll call it a C rank. It's kind of a middle of the road. Okay, next up, quantum immortality. You could look this one up. You could look it up on YouTube. You'll find videos about it. This one could be basically boiled down to this. No matter how the universe/multiverse works out, there's always gonna be a universe/multiverse, I don't know the correct term, that exists where you are currently conscious. So whatever happens, you will be conscious. You will be living due to like quantum mechanics and shit. And the go-to visualization that people use for this is you're in a room with no windows or something, you're just in a box, and there's a nuclear bomb underneath you. And you have a button in front of you. And that button has a 50% chance of blowing up the nuke and killing you. In quantum immortality, you could hit that button 1,000,000 times and you will survive because you're constantly navigating the path of universes where you live through that event. kind of a weird example, but that's the example you're going to see if you watch videos on it. And I kind of dig this theory because it at least tries to explain things in some sort of a scientific manner and using a scientific method. Do I think it's plausible? Yeah, I think it's pretty plausible. I think the only problems I have with this one stem from like what happens about old age, because like the examples they provide, it's like, oh, you're always going to be alive. At some point, you're gonna have to die, right? So I just don't know how that works with this theory. But on the surface, I think it is possible to reconcile the two somehow. Maybe you just always live the longest life you could possibly lead and then you reincarnate as yourself or something. I don't know. But I do like it. And I think I'm gonna give this one B tier. Okay, next, if you've ever seen Rick and Morty, Life Well Lived, it's a video game that Rick and Morty play, and Morty lives an entire life like a video game, but he doesn't know it when he's in the game. It's just like he's living a normal human life, and then he comes right out of it. This one, like, I don't really know if I have a name for this theory specifically other than like video game or simulation. And whatever the case, video game or simulation, you're going to have the same problem as the eternal life coping mechanism, which is that once you come out of that game, we still gotta have the same debate. Like, what happens now? Because like what happened inside there was just a game. And for that reason, it's gonna be another D tier because it's basically the same as eternal life coping mechanism. You can think of it just as manufactured reincarnation. And that brings us to the final one here, which is karma-based reincarnation. And this one, like, you can come back as anything, right? Although I think it might be limited to animals here on Earth. But for the benefit of the doubt, let's just say that karma-based reincarnation is agnostic of whether you're on Earth or like some fucking planet light years away. I think the theories that kind of leave room for like vague interpretation are better. And I think with karma, you can kind of do that. You can kind of like vaguely say like, oh, maybe in like the world of souls or whatever the fuck, doing good means you get to live as like cooler things. I don't know. But it's like, it's basically got all the pros that I like about all the other reincarnation theories, like the fact that you can make it last forever, especially with this one that it's like not entirely human-centric, although in some cases I think it might be Earth-centric. But if you kind of leave it open vaguely, I think karma-based reincarnation is pretty chill. Damn, I don't know where it could go. I think for me it's somewhere in A or B. It's basically like the one I put at S, but like there's an added constraint of you have to be nice. And I don't know if that's really the case. For that reason, I think I'm gonna put it in B. Pretty good, B tier. And there you have it. We just had a serious conversation about what happens when you die, or what maybe could happen when you die. We really don't know. Could be none of these things, could be like a mix of them. It's impossible to tell. And that's part of life. I hope you guys... What the fuck? I hope you guys have a fantastic holiday season. A prosperous new year. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, have a great night, have a great morning, whatever time it is. And I'll see you next time. Bye.